Butcher, you piece of shit!
I murdered Isabella Calais, and I can't stop the killing. You hear what I'm saying, Cross? I murdered Isabella Calais, and I can't stop the killing.
I understood the chilling message. I'd gotten it for the first time. He was adding more letters to the list of his victims. Pierce was creating a new, longer code. I murdered Isabella Calais, and I can't stop killing. If he got away, he'd kill again and again. Maybe Thomas Pierce wasn't human after all. He's already intimated that he was his own god. Pierce had an automatic out. He fired at us. I yanked the steering wheel over hard to the left, trying desperately to get us out of the line of fire. Our car went up on 2 wheels. Everything was blurred and out of focus. I gripped the wheels. I thought we were going over. Pierce's Thunderbird shot off Route 2, rocketing down a side road. I don't know how he made the turnoff at the speed he was traveling. Maybe he didn't care whether he made it or not. Our sedan stayed upright and set itself back down on all 4 wheels. The FBI cars following Pierce shot past the turn. None of us could stop. Next came a ragged ballet of skidding stops and U-turns, the screech and whine of tires and brakes. We'd lost sight of Pierce. He was behind us. We raced back to the turnoff, then down a twisting, chevroned country road. We found the Thunderbird abandoned about 2 miles from Route 2. My heart was thudding hard inside my chest. Pierce wasn't in the car. Pierce wasn't here. The woods on both sides of the road were thick and offered lots of cover. Samson and I climbed out of our car. We hurried back into the dense thicket of fir trees, Glocks out. It was almost impossible to get through the underbrush. There was no sign of Thomas Pierce anywhere. Pierce was gone. Thomas Pierce had vanished into thin air again. I was almost convinced he might actually live in a parallel world. Maybe he was an alien. Samson and I were headed into Logan International Airport. We were going home to Washington. Rush hour traffic in Boston wasn't cooperating with the plan. We were still more than a mile from Callahan Tunnel, gridlocked in a line that was barely moving. Grunting and groaning cars and trucks surrounded us. Boston was rubbing our faces in our failure. Metaphor for our case, the whole goddamn manhunt for Pierce. Samson said about the traffic jumble, the mess. A good thing about Samson, he gets either stoic or funny when things go really badly. He refuses to wallow in shit. He swims right out of it. I'm getting an idea, I told him, giving him some warning. I knew you were flying around somewhere in your private universe. Knew you weren't really here, sitting in this car with me, listening to what I was saying. We'd just be stuck here in the tunnel traffic if we stayed put. Samson nodded. Mm-hmm. We're in Boston. Don't want to have to come back tomorrow. Follow up on one of your hunches then. Best to do it now. Chase those wild geese while the chasing is good. I pulled out of the tight lane of stalled traffic and made an illegal U-turn. There's just one wild goose that I can think to chase. You gonna tell me where we're headed? I need to put my vest back on. Depends on what you think of my hunches. I followed forest green signs towards Storrow Drive, heading out of Boston the way we came. Traffic was heavy in that direction, too. There were too many people everywhere you went these days. Too much crowding, too much chaos, too much stress on everybody. Better put your vest back on, I told Samson. He didn't argue with me. Samson reached into the back seat and fished around for our vests. I wiggled into my own vest as I drove. I think Thomas Pierce wants this to end. I think he's ready now. I saw it in his eyes. So he had his chance back there in Concord. Pull off the road. Pull over, Pierce. You remember any of that? Sound familiar, Alex? I glanced at Samson. He needs to be in control. S was for straw, but S is also for Smith. He has it figured out, John. He knows how he wants it to end. He always knew. It's important to him that he finish this. I could see Samson staring out of the corner of my eye. And? So? What the hell is that supposed to mean? Do you know how it ends? He wants to end on S. It's magical for him. It's the way he has it figured, the way it has to be. It's his mind game, and he's playing it obsessively. He can't stop playing. He told us that. He's still playing. Samson was clearly having trouble with this. We had just missed capturing Pierce an hour ago. Would he put himself at risk again? You think he's that crazy? I think he's that crazy, John. I'm sure of it. Half a dozen police squad cars were gathered on Inman Street in Cambridge. The blue and white cruisers were outside the apartment where Thomas Pierce and Isabella Calais had once lived, where Isabella had been murdered 4 years before. EMS ambulances were parked near the Greystone front stoop. Sirens bleated and wailed. If we hadn't turned around at the Callahan Tunnel, we would have missed it. Samson and I showed our detective shields and kept on moving forward in a hurry. Nobody stopped us. Nobody could have. Pierce was upstairs. So was Mr. Smith. The game had come full circle. Somebody called in a homicide in progress. One of the Cambridge uniforms told us on the way up the stone front stairs. "I heard they got a guy cornered upstairs, wackadoo of the first order." "We know all about him," Sampson said. The elevator was stuck, so Sampson and I took the stairs to the 4th floor. "You think Pierce called all this heat on himself?" Sampson asked as we hurried up the stairs. I was beyond being out of breath, beyond pain, beyond shock or surprise. This was how he wanted to end. I didn't know what to make of Thomas Pierce. He had numbed me, and all the rest of us. I was drifting beyond thought, at least logical ideas. There had never been a killer like Pierce, not even close. He was the most alienated human being I'd ever met. Not alien. Alienated. "You still with me, Alex?" I felt Sampson's hand gripping my shoulder. "Sorry," I said. At first I thought Pierce couldn't feel anything, that he was just another psychopath. Cold rage, arbitrary murders. And now? I was inside Pierce's head. Now I'm wondering whether Pierce feels everything. I think that's what drove him mad. This one can feel. The Cambridge police were gathered everywhere in the small, twisty hallway. The local cops looked shell-shocked and wild-eyed. A photograph of Isabella stared out from the foyer. She looked beautiful, almost regal, and so very sad. "Welcome to the wild, wacky world of Thomas Pierce," Sampson said. A Cambridge detective explained the situation to us. He had silver-blonde hair, an ageless hatchet face. He spoke in a low, confidential tone, almost in a whisper. "Pierce is in the bedroom at the far end of the hall, barricaded himself there. The master bedroom. His and Isabella's room," I said. The detective nodded. "Right, the master bedroom. I worked the original murder. I hate the prick. I saw what he did to her." "What's he doing in the bedroom?" I asked. The detective shook his head. "We think he's going to kill himself. He doesn't care to explain himself to us peons. He's got a gun. The powers that be are trying to decide whether to go in." "He hurt anybody?" Sampson spoke up. The Cambridge detective shook his head. "No. Not that we know of, not yet." Sampson's eyes narrowed. "Then maybe we shouldn't interfere." We walked down the narrow hallway to where several more detectives were talking among themselves. A couple of them were arguing and pointing toward the bedroom. "This is how he wants it. He's still in control." "I'm Alex Cross," I told the detective lieutenant on the scene. He knew who I was. "What has he said so far?" The lieutenant was sweating. He was a bruiser, a good 30 pounds over his fighting weight. Told us that he killed Isabella Calais. Confessed. I think we knew that already. Said he was going to kill himself. He rubbed his chin with his left hand. "We're trying to decide if we care. The FBI is on the way." I pulled away from the lieutenant. "Pierce!" I called down the hallway. The talking going on outside the bedroom suddenly stopped. "Pierce! It's Alex Cross!" I called again. "I want to come in, Pierce." I felt a chill. It was too quiet, not a sound. Then I heard Pierce from the bedroom. He sounded tired and weak. Maybe it was an act. Who knew what he would pull next?
"Come in if you want. Just you, Cross."
"Let him go," Sampson whispered from behind. "Alex, let it go for once." I turned to him. I wish I could. I pushed through the group of policemen at the end of the hallway. I remembered the poster that hung there. "Without God, we are condemned to be free." Was that what this was about? I took out my gun and slowly inched open the bedroom door. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Thomas Pierce was sprawled on the bed he had once shared with Isabella Calais. He held a gleaming, razor-sharp scalpel in his hand. Thomas Pierce's chest was cut wide open. He had ripped himself apart as he would a corpse at an autopsy. He was still alive, but barely. It was incredible that he was conscious and alert. Pierce spoke to me. I don't know how, but he did.
"You've never seen Mr. Smith's handiwork before?"
I shook my head in disbelief. I had never seen anything like this, not in all my years in violent crimes or homicide. Flaps of skin hung over Pierce's ribcage, exposing translucent muscle and tendons. I was afraid, repulsed, shocked, all at the same time. Thomas Pierce was Mr. Smith's victim. His last?
"Don't come any closer. Just stay there."
It was a command. "Who am I talking to? Thomas Pierce or Mr. Smith?" Pierce shrugged.
"Don't play shrink games with me. I'm smarter than you are."
I nodded. Why argue with him, with Pierce? Or was it Mr. Smith?
I murdered Isabella Calais,
he said slowly. His eyes became hooded. He almost looked in a trance.
I murdered Isabella Calais.
He pressed the scalpel to his chest, ready to stab himself again, to pierce. I wanted to turn away, but I couldn't. This man wants to cut into his own heart, I thought to myself. Everything has come full circle to this. Is Mr. Smith S? Of course he is. You never got rid of any of Isabella's things, I said. You kept her pictures up. Pierce nodded.
Yes, Dr. Cross. I was mourning her, wasn't I?
That's what I thought at first. It's what the people at the Behavioral Science Unit at Quantico believed. But then I finally got it.
What did you get? Tell me all about myself.
Pierce mocked. He was lucid. His mind still worked quickly. The other murders. You didn't want to kill any of them, did you? Thomas Pierce glared. He focused on me with a sheer act of will. His arrogance reminded me of Seniji.
So, why did I?
You were punishing yourself. Each murder was a reenactment of Isabella's death. You repeated the ritual over and over. You suffered her death each time you killed. Thomas Pierce moaned.
I murdered her here, in this bed. Can you imagine? Of course you can't. No one can.
He raised the scalpel above his body. Pierce, don't! I had to do something. I rushed him. I threw myself at him, and the scalpel jammed into my right palm. I screamed in pain as Pierce pulled it out. I grabbed at the folded yellow and white flowered comforter and pressed it against Pierce's chest. He was fighting me, flopping around like a man having a seizure. Alex, no! Alex, look out! I heard Samson call out from behind me. I could see him in the corner of my eye. He was moving fast toward the bed. Alex, the scalpel! He yelled. Pierce was still struggling beneath me. He screamed obscenities. His strength was amazing. I didn't know where the scalpel was, or if he still had it.
Let Smith kill Pierce.
No, I yelled back. I want you alive! Then the unthinkable again. Samson fired from point-blank range. The explosion was deafening in the small bedroom. Pierce's body convulsed on the bed. Both his legs kicked high in the air. He screeched like a badly wounded animal. He sounded inhuman, like an alien. Samson fired a second time. A strange guttural sound came from Pierce's throat. His eyes rolled way back in his head. The whites showed. The scalpel dropped from his hand. I shook my head. No, John, no more. Pierce is dead. Mrs. Smith is dead, too. May he rest in hell. I was drained of all feeling. Slightly wounded and bandaged, but at least I got home safe and sound, and in time to say goodnight to the kids. Damon and Jenny now had their own rooms. They both wanted it that way. Nana had given Jenny her room on the second floor. She had moved down to the smaller bedroom near the kitchen, which suited her fine. I was so glad to be there, to be home again. Somebody's been decorating in here, I said as I peeked into Jenny's new digs. It surprised her that I was home from the wars. Her face lit up like a jack-o'-lantern on Halloween. I did it myself. Jenny pumped up her arms and made muscles for me. Nana helped me hang the new curtains, though. We made them on the sewing machine. You like? You're the hostess with the mostest. I guess I missed all the fun, I told her. You sure did, Jenny said and laughed. Come here, you, she said. I went over to my little girl, and she gave me one of the sweetest hugs in the long and sometimes illustrious history of fathers and daughters. I felt so safe in her arms. Then I went into Damon's room, and because it had been both Damon and Jenny's room for so long, I was taken aback, shook up with the change. Damon had chosen a sporting decor with monster and comedy movie accents. Manly yet sensitive. I liked what he had done to his room. It was pure Damon. You've got to help me with my room, I told him. We missed our boxing lesson tonight, he said. Not in the tone of a major complaint, just setting the record straight. We settled for wrestling on his bed, but I also had to agree to a double boxing lesson in the basement the following night. Actually, I couldn't wait. Damon was growing up too fast.